we're always looking at two different roads enterprises go through when they're looking at a mobile initiative. Specifically, I'm talking about apps. One road is run by the marketing department, and it's about how do we persuade our customers. And the other road is generally run by all kinds of different folks within an organization. And it's about how do we respond to our customers. I boil that down into two very simple areas. What's the goal of the app? Is it to sell or is it to serve? And I'm going to kind of go through some examples of these two different philosophies of building or making mobile meaningful. We'll first take the sale road, or the persuade customers road. Just recently, Harvard Business Review, and there's a lot of other magazines that have the same opinion, that talk about how to make advertising work within mobile. The marketing unit head of Harvard Business School says consumers don't perceive apps as intrusive advertising, they value them for their functionality. Branded apps, branded experiences need to have these 5 tenets. Are they convenient? Do they offer a unique value? Do they offer social value? Do they provide incentives? And do they entertain? If we want to look at examples of what he means by these kinds of applications, there's a lot of them, a lot of branded apps on the web or in the Apple Store right now. A few to mention: the Geico Bro Stash, the Taco Bell nutrition app where you can go and look at nutrition information for Taco Bell, and the Heineken Clink app where you can clink your mobile app with somebody else's mobile app. Any way that a brand can get engaged with an audience, that's what we're talking about. The de facto standard in this area, touted by experts, is the Pampers Hello Baby app. It's an app that allows moms, it's pretty engaging. It's an app that allows moms to track their fetuses, their baby's progress in womb, in utero. So you put your due date in, and I'll show you what your baby looks like right now in your womb. And as a 3D interactive piece, it offers incentives to buy Pampers as things are coming up, and you can share it. You can share it with your friends and family on your social networks. And it meets all of the Harvard's stated goals of a branded experience. And its average rating is about 3.5, not bad for a branded app. Now if we're going to flip to the serve side, or what we call utility apps, we look at Forbes, how Forbes talks about utility apps. They're very simply measured. Are they useful? Are they usable? Are they desirable? They specifically are targeting retail folks that are doing really well in the mobile app space. Walgreens and CVS, they're providing very intuitive, simple ways of engaging with your medications and understanding what medications you're taking, drug interactions, that kind of stuff, right from their app. Other examples of what we call utility apps: Airstrip, which is something that we designed that allows OBGYNs to track mother and baby heart rate while they're in the hospital. The T. Rowe Price app, again, something that we built. Monitor your retirement right from the phone. Another great example is something like the Wells Fargo mobile banking app. Those are all designed to serve customers, not to sell to them. The de facto standard in this category is the Domino's ordering a pizza app. Makes it really easy to just order a pizza, something that you want to do, don't want to have to walk up to your computer. Generally, you make a phone call. Instead of making a phone call, it's a lot easier to select a pizza that you want to be delivered, or if you want to pick it up on the way home. If we look at how this is doing against the standards, obviously, real easy, useful, usable, desirable, 5-star app on the App Store. I want to compare these two. A note, Domino's Pizza sees 30% of all of its ordering through digital channels now. I thought that was really fascinating. Let's compare them. Apps that sell, this is the de facto standard to the de facto standard. Look at the popularity of the two apps. Number of ratings, 130,000 ratings. That's not downloads, that's how many people decided to rate the app. 38 ratings on the Pampers app. If you're looking for eyeballs and popularity, which is the point of this, it's not very successful in my account. Also, if you look at the ratings themselves, it's 30% negative. So if you're trying to add brand value in this channel with an app, in my opinion, this is a colossal failure. You're doing damage to the brand compared to 98% positive on the Domino's side. Serving your customers in this market versus selling to your customers in this market. These are the de facto standards. I think the contrast is pretty stark. You look and you dig into the actual representative reviews, and this woman rated it 3 stars, which isn't bad, but called Pampers out. A man must have thought this up. They basically said, I'm not going to share this socially. I know you want me to do it, Pampers, but this is not something that I want to do. I don't want to share. I don't want to announce. I'm not ready to announce this to my family. And you're forcing me, in essence, Pampers forced me because of the metrics they're using to measure the success of this app, which is it being populated socially? Are we connecting people socially? It's the measure. Eyeballs is the measure here. They had to force their customers to share socially, and it's exactly what their customers didn't want to do. It's a very self-centered point of view from Pampers. Other interesting tidbits, 80% of branded apps are downloaded less than 1,000 times. 1% achieve 1 million downloads. And something else that should be scaring brands, 1/3 of apps in iTunes don't have a single download. So I think my point is pretty clear. Harvard's wrong. They're just plain wrong. Trying to persuade your customers in the App Store doesn't work. If you look at CPG brands, and you look at a lot of them, there's a couple that do okay. Nike and Red Bull, I think, do a really good job. But their core value is entertainment and helping athletes, right? Entertainment on Red Bull and helping athletes on Red Bull. It's where there's their core value. So their apps reflect their core value. Pampers doesn't reflect their core value. Everybody else in this category, branded apps that are trying to do this, they're treating it like it's a grocery store shelf. You go in, you look at where all the Coca-Cola products, as much shelf space as they can take up, the more Coke they're going to sell. If you look at the App Store, do a search on Coke or Tide or Procter & Gamble or Pepsi, it's a lot of apps that do nothing and barely get downloaded, but there's a big brand presence there. It's doing damage to their brand. It's not doing what they think it's doing. It's doing damage to their brand based on the stats. To create great mobile experiences, they need to stop persuading with apps and begin to provide great value. Serve. What that means, from my perspective, is Pampers should have never been on the App Store, which is controversial for sure if you talk to a marketer. But if you can't serve your customers, and I don't even know how you're talking about poopy diapers. What's the mobile way you can serve your customers on that? I struggle to find a good reason that's really going to provide ROI to Pampers. Looks like you have an idea. No? No? Sorry? A game? So I'm going to get into that a little bit. That's where a lot of companies go to is games. I'm going to chat about that in a little bit. So in most organizations on the service side, now let's take a look at the service side. Who's responsible for service, for digital service? It's IT. It's IT. Your IT organization is responsible for digitally serving your customers and your employees. If that doesn't scare you, it should. And I'm a geek. I'll prove it later with some pictures. I'm a nerd. I used to be a developer. I'm a coder. I should not be the person, or who I was 10 years ago, should not be the person that's in charge of serving your customers digitally. I'm a coder. And how do we measure ourselves? We just are finishing up a report, a collective study with Forrester Research that we're interviewing IT executives, CIOs, CTOs, leaders of IT in large organizations. And we asked them to say, all right, how do you think you're doing in this space? And they gave themselves, the leaders of this organization gave themselves a D. 58% of them said, we think we're doing, 68% of us think we're doing a good to great job. And I think that number is inflated, by the way. Because if you ask them the same question, but you say, how do your peers measure you? How do you think your peers see you? Well, we'll get an F if you ask our peers. And the fact that those numbers aren't exactly the same, I don't know how they can figure that. So IT themselves are saying we shouldn't be doing this. And what's worse is they see good to excellent as on time, on budget, in scope. Who cares if anybody's using it? Who cares if we're really serving anybody? If you ask any project manager in part of an IT project, this is what they're measured on. On time, on budget, in scope. Not if it's good. At least marketers, who I made fun of earlier, thinks in terms of customer. IT thinks in terms of user. And if you break the word user down, I hate this word. I hate that our industry uses it. It's a drug. It's somebody that uses drugs, a manipulator of others. This is how we, as geeks, think of the people that use technology. Manipulating people that want us to do stuff for them. Ron Rogowski, Forrester Research. A little quote from him. I love this quote. There's only two businesses that call people users. Drug dealers and Starbucks. Phil said it's the same thing. And not only that, not only do they call them users, but it's one of 1,000 different things that these IT organizations are measured on. They're not measured on great products. They're not measured on serving clients. They're measured on, these are just the things I could think of in 30 seconds. If you've ever seen an IT system document, they have a very great system architecture, laying out exactly where all the connections are made. And the user is, if you're lucky, it's on the document. It's this little thing down here. It's a picture of a computer. It's not even a human being. When I go and speak at large technology conferences, I try to point this out to them. I actually show them the next video.
Right now, there is a virtually invisible network which links together millions of people who would otherwise be completely isolated from each other. This exciting technology has grown to become an incredibly complex web of connections that is so large and difficult to track that it would be practically impossible to estimate its total size. And even though most of us live alone in urban isolation, this system represents one of the few ways all of our lives are intertwined. This system is modern plumbing.
This hits hard to geeks because in reality, as nerds, we're asking our customers basically, we're geeking out over our copper piping and how good our plumbing is and water filtration and asking our customers to drink from the fire hose. If we don't get this right, we're going to be tech support in 5 years. Technology is screwing this up. And I shame them on it all the time. And the reason is their process, the way they think. We identify a business opportunity, we define the requirements, we select a technical solution, we integrate the solution, and then we put a UI on top of it. When in reality, to our customers, the UI is the system. If you think about just the plumbing analogy, you turn on a faucet, water comes out. Do you think, unless you're a plumber, about the infrastructure it took to deliver the water? You do this yourself. If you think about a Garmin that you use. Have you ever been lost on a Garmin or on your iPhone? Do you ever think about the fact that the technological miracle of that device is there's 26 satellites rotating around the globe that pinpoint where you're at within 2 meters, integrated with updating maps and live traffic data. It's a technological miracle. And you get lost, you get pointed down the wrong road, and you're yelling at your phone. You don't think about the infrastructure. The UI is the system. If the UI is broken, the system's broken. And we define the interface last. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So we're pushing IT to stop doing this and reverse the thinking. Instead of defining the UI last, we define it first and then define the technical solution next. This is where we're pushing IT. So jumping ahead, 5 essentials for creating products that serve. After 8 years in the industry, EffectiveUI, we founded EffectiveUI almost 8 years ago. April 1st will be 8 years. I don't know what that says, it's April Fool's Day, but that's the day it was. We've done over 300 successful projects for Fortune 1000 companies. We've noticed what works and what doesn't. We've identified these 5 as the essentials for when a project wins in the market. These have to be done. Essential number 1, every winning solution needs a maven. And there's been a lot of, to take the flip of this, we've been a part of a lot of organizations where they try to build a product with consensus. Consensus is not collaboration. Consensus gives you the lowest common denominator product. If you don't have somebody in an organization that's championing the success or failure of a project, if they're not measured on it, and they can only do about 2 at a time, if they have 10 projects at a time, they're going to fail. If you don't have somebody that lives or dies on a product, it will not come anywhere close to achieving greatness. It'd be lucky if it achieves mediocrity. Steve Jobs is a resounding example of this. He was a maven for the iPhone, a maven for the iMac. Essential number 2, build team empathy through insight. And I'm going to bring Steve back for this one as well. I'm going to use him as the example of everybody uses him wrong in this example. Steve Jobs never did a focus group. He didn't care about him. People read that as though he had some internal greatness that allowed him to define products that were great. He just knew. In reality, Steve Jobs had what every designer strives for when they're designing an app. He had customer empathy. He was the customer. He built the iPhone for himself. So if you're building an app or designing an app and you're not the primary user, you need to go pretend. You need to go live a day in the life. Our designers all the time engage in user research with our user research director. They're a part of it, so they can build empathy. Now, since they're not an OBGYN, they have to go live a day in the life of an OBGYN. Since they're not a salesperson for level 3, they have to go walk a day in the life of the level 3 salesperson if they're designing an app for that person. So don't misunderstand what Steve did. He didn't do something that was incredible. He just designed an iPhone for himself. Now, the supply chain and the way he did it was incredible, but the design, he just built something that he wanted. If we look at that sell versus serve, sell tactics, marketing agencies, creative directors, design for the big idea. They're designing for persuasion, which makes sense. And there's a lot of value in the market for creative directors and selling. I'm not saying that this isn't valuable, but it's not the right way to think when you're building great applications that serve. Serve is about building empathy with your customers and designing with empathy in mind. Essential number 3, everything is a prototype. And what I mean by that is if you look at system integrators, other agencies that say they do UX work, they have a 3-step process. Discover, design, deliver. Discover, design, deliver. Design is not a process step. Design is a discipline woven throughout all of it. Design needs to be a part of the entire thing, as well as engineering needs to be part of the discovery and the product definition process. So when I say everything's a prototype, What I mean by that is every design artifact, until you're building something, is a prototype. It's prototypical. Wireframes, visual designs, prototypes themselves. All of them are prototypical until you start building. And once you build, the only definition, I can't remember who quoted it, but the only definition of a software product is the product itself. You have to iterate through it. Here's a couple of examples of other types of prototypes. So this is a prototype that we built for Coca-Cola that uncovers a way to collaborate with their agencies on how to build designs that will wrap around 3D objects. I'm going to skip through these really quick. Another example of an actual prototype is how is the designer themselves going to check their designs against things like Coke cans? How am I going to make sure that when I put the Christmas ad or the Christmas design around a Coke can, Santa's nose doesn't get too big? So these are prototypes that we built for Coca-Cola before building the entire thing. Essential number 4, plan for iteration and evolution. Basically what we mean here is when you're building apps that serve, if you're treating them like a campaign, you're failing. You have to realize that there's versions. Customers expect you to iterate, improve, and re-release. And if you're building apps that serve, that revolve around user experience, you have to plan for this. And one of the ways you plan for this is essential number 4, which is, no, actually, I'm sorry, I added that one last minute. And I took out the other one. The way to do this correctly is design for optionality. And I'm even talking about technically design for optionality. So build the systems that are going to feed it. Build your plumbing to be able to tap in to all kinds of different UIs and all kinds of different experiences. If you're building the UI and then just building an API that feeds just that UI, you're not designing for optionality. So that's what I mean by planning for iteration and evolution. You have to almost have a crystal ball of where you're going to go. And you get that through user research. You're not going to be able to do everything users want, but you know what your users want when you do user research, and then you can design in phases. Essential number 5, and this is this thing that you mentioned about gaming. Stick to your business. Every app that we've seen in the mobile market where a company tried to do something that was outside of their core business has failed. Domino's, ordering pizza. Pampers, tried to build a social integrated calendar. It doesn't work. Weight Watchers, first mobile initiative. Can you guess what Weight Watchers' first mobile initiative is or was? You think it's a calorie counter. It's a way to interact and measure. No, it was a game to feed hungry. It was a huge flop, huge flop. Games don't work. They're hard. They're hard to build right. And so, yeah, go. You have a question?
McDonald's has seen a lot of success in the App Store. I'm not sure if those are games or not.
I'm not familiar with what McDonald's is doing.
Fish, you know, their fish sandwich.
Yeah. Oh, so have they? I'd be really curious because.
Okay, should we download it now?
Yeah, I'm really curious about what McDonald's is doing. I'm not saying there's definitely outliers, right? There's definitely outliers of people that kind of hit it. It's like going into a campaign saying we want to create a viral video. How do you know what's going to be viral? Like, it's a crapshoot. And if you want to spend millions of dollars producing hundreds of different apps to see which one sticks, if you're McDonald's and you can do that in the app market, they hit one. But Old Spice, who knew that commercial was going to take off? It's lame, but it's funny as hell. But they did. I bet you they didn't know it was going to take off as much as it did. It's a risk. And I'm not knocking marketers that want to go after that and try that, but it's just, for me, it just seems way too risky and a complete waste of money. All right, so I'm going to go into 5 things that all mavens must be passionate about. I want to make sure I stick on time. I've got 10 more things real quick here. So 5 things that mavens must be passionate about. Build interfaces. If you're building interfaces that serve, interfaces that serve customers must be adaptive. What we mean by adaptive is don't make your user adapt to the UI, make the UI adapt to them. This is a classic example of just a mobile website by VMware, technology company, and they didn't build a mobile site. and they're making their users contort their phone and zoom in and zoom out, when in reality, a technology company, there's no excuse. You need to have this is a simple example of making something difficult to use in a channel that they're accustomed to using it a different way. It has to adapt to where the user is and what the user's doing. This one's obvious. Interfaces that serve customers should be beautiful. And I don't need to go into what beautiful is. Like, it's subjective, but we know what beautiful isn't, right? Interfaces that serve customers must be opaque. And what we mean by opaque is the technology needs to be opaque. So if we're building a UI and a customer notices the UI, we've failed. If they just notice that they got their job done, we've succeeded. And as geeks, we love to see the inner workings of it. But my mom hates it. I just bought my mom an iPad a year ago. First computer. It wasn't a computer for her. It was just a way to connect with her friends on Facebook. And Facebook, the iPad, made the technology opaque. It was just, I'm going to click and share something with my friends. Email was a struggle for her. Facebook was easy. Interfaces that serve customers must be intuitive. I don't know if you know this guy. This guy's a local guy. The video professor. You know this guy? He's like, he'll teach you how to use Word and Excel and Windows. I hate this guy. Let's put him out of business. Let's not require manuals on how to use software. So they should be intuitively easy to use. No manuals. Zero training time is something that we talk about with clients all the time. You want Boeing, you want your customers, airline mechanics, to come up and be able to just intuitively order a part. Right now they have a manual they had a manual this thick on how to work through the system to order a part for a plane that's sitting on the tarmac that costs $60,000 an hour while it's sitting there. And the last one is interfaces that serve customers must be approachable. So I shop at Express. And this is a classic example of two things. It's a very complex website. They're trying to serve multiple masters. This was a website built on consensus. Marketing department said we needed a music player. They put a music player in here. They said we need to be social. There's 3 different ways to be social. We need to increase conversions. I didn't do anything for this modal window to come up. I came here to shop for underwear. I didn't. They're already asking me for my, to be able to spam me more before I even get in here and can buy more stuff. They have clearance items, and this was a marketing person saying we need more conversions. We need more people to email. That's what that was. We need to make more conversions, 30% clearance. Completely complex, competing objectives, and built by consensus. Horrible way to serve customers. And this is a website. I know it's not a mobile app, but there's a lot of mobile apps. If you look at the United, I'm also a United customer. Does anybody here have the United airline app? Anybody here like it? Phil likes it. Do you play the game?
I didn't know there was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's what, 1,000 things you can do on the United airline app, and you ask yourself, well, I want to check my flight time, and I want the mobile boarding pass. That's really all you use it for, right? Pretty much. And they just overcomplicated it. They want to be the destination travel hub. If you're flying American, you're screwed. 5 areas where companies see the largest ROI. I'll go through these quickly. Increased conversion rates. Obviously, if you serve your customers better through digital channels, mobile channels, automatically corresponds to increased conversion rates. There we go. Another way companies see ROI, reduced hard costs. One of our customers, financial company, they do retirement, and Wasn't T. Rowe Price was another one. And they paid for an initiative we built for them by the savings in FedEx costs. And it was nearly a 7-figure solution. They just had to stop spending money mailing customers retirement reports. And by the way, we also, if you could have taken out the FedEx shipping costs, and we would have saved they would have immediate ROI just from paper and ink costs on the app we built for them. Just making it easy for their customer to understand what number they're going to retire on, which is also what we found out doing user research. That's all their customers wanted. They didn't want 60 pages of reports. They just wanted to know what their number was. So reduced hard costs, bandwidth, shipping, paper, et cetera. Reduced support costs. McAfee, we did a project for Linksys where they completely dropped, we basically, for one of the routers, we redesigned the setup process. How do you set up the router, the software and analog version of how to set it up? They virtually eliminated technical support calls to the extent that we couldn't find out how the app was doing because they thought their customer support logs were broken. They got no support calls. So they saw a dramatic drop. McAfee's the same way. And the final one is increased employee efficiency. This is when we're building intranet applications. We see an increased efficiency, a decrease in computer time by about 50% when we focus on things like time tracking or travel and expenses, or for Adobe, we wrote a bug tracking tool that it took them 15 minutes to track a bug down to 30 seconds to track a bug. And in the Adobe system, there's 5,000 developers. You can see the ROI is pretty significant for them. And the last one, reduce maintenance costs. And this is actually the biggest one. In any software initiative that isn't a campaign, companies fund the build, and they don't think about funding the support. And there's countless studies, IBM's the one that's coming to mind right now, that talk about what the total support cost is on a software project. It's 80%. That means for every $1 you spend to build something, there's $4. If you spend $1 million on an application, there's $4 million in support costs. And the number one issue for support costs is answering unmet user needs. So if you know what users want before you build it, you're going to have much lower support costs. It's dramatic for most enterprises. And one quick note about us, what we do, and I should have started with this now that I think about it. So we're not a marketing organization. We're not an IT organization, although we have a very large IT team. We build stuff. But we fundamentally fall in this area we call craft. Think of an auto manufacturer. You have the marketing company that cares about the brand and the ads, very valuable, especially in automotive. You have the engineers that build the engines, but neither one of these folks help Ford define the experience of what it is like driving a car, and what it is like to open the door, and what it's like to shut the door, the sounds, the dashboard. That's done through a lot of prototyping, which is really why companies hire us, is because of our research and our prototyping, and then our ability to architect something to an experience rather than something that's really well engineered or something that's a really good marketing collateral. And I told you I had proof of I was a nerd. This is me as I was 16 getting my very first solar calculator, and only a nerd could be that excited about getting a solar calculator. So I'm opening up for questions about any of what I've talked about anything that you guys came here to connect with, and if it's too deep, I'll defer to Lucas and Amanda. Nobody wants to be the first one ever. No? Not enough beer? More beer? Any questions on things I'm not qualified to talk about? Yeah, shoot.
I thought it said bad creative director.
It did. This is stuff I'm not qualified to talk about bad creative directors. Or I am qualified to talk about bad creative directors. I'm not qualified to talk about good creative directors.
So you're not qualified to talk about that.
I am. It doesn't matter. It's just a joke. I'm trying to explain a joke.
Positive.
Seriously, did you have a question or?
Yeah, I've had similar experiences with creative directors, and I just wanted to know what were yours?
So, again, going back to the sell versus serve, it fundamentally comes down to my core belief, sell versus serve. Creative directors are great at at intuitively coming up with an emotional connection to how to persuade somebody to do something. Very valuable talent. But our point of view, when you're talking about user experience, persuasion is absolutely the wrong way to approach a project. It has to come from an empathetic place. And when you start talking about empathy, everybody wants to say they're empathetic. Creative directors aren't. It's okay. Like they need to get good with that. It's like I don't want to spend 3 hours in a McDonald's looking at a customer order from a McDonald's. I don't want to do that. It's too hard. And also our lead experience architects that have come from creative backgrounds, and Amanda can talk to this, she can throw something at me if I'm wrong, but they don't find inspiration from that part of the job. They find inspiration of uncovering this nugget that nobody understood and this user frustration that nobody knew about, and solving that problem is why our team gets up. And it requires two different skill sets, and those skill sets, in my experience, they clash. Totally clash. Anybody else? Everybody just wants to get to the beer. No? Well, I'm available one-on-one for questions as you guys grab drinks and enjoy yourselves. And there we go. Thanks, guys.